November 18, 1942. The skies above Henderson Field on Guadalcanal were filled with tension. An unnamed Japanese Zero pilot gripped his control stick tightly as he spotted something strange rising from the airfield below. These were no Wildcats, no P-40s. Instead, twin-boomed American fighters climbed steadily into the sky. The pilot's report to his squadron commander later that day was simple, but it revealed the beginning of a seismic shift. Twin engines, twin tails, climbing like nothing we've ever seen. What he had witnessed was the combat debut of the P-38 Lightning against Japanese fighters. For the first time, the vaunted Mitsubishi Zero had met an enemy that could climb faster, dive harder, and fight on terms the Japanese had not prepared for. For nearly a year after Pearl Harbor, the Zero had dominated the Pacific. Its astonishing maneuverability and long range gave Japanese pilots almost mythical status. In the skies over China, the Philippines, and the Dutch East Indies, Allied fighters had been torn apart by men like Saburo Sakai and Junichi Sasai. The Zero could outturn anything it faced, and Japanese pilots carried themselves with the absolute confidence that they were invincible in the air. But on that November day over Guadalcanal, the confidence began to crack. The American P-38s of the 339th Fighter Squadron struck from altitude, killing 3 Japanese fighters while staying well above the Zero's comfort zone. The Japanese pilots suddenly realized that the old rules of dogfighting no longer applied. The Lightning was unlike anything they had imagined. Designed by Lockheed engineer Clarence Kelly Johnson, the P-38 had been built not around agility, but around speed, range, and firepower. With 2 turbo-supercharged Allison engines, it could climb to over 40,000 feet and reach speeds the Zero couldn't dream of matching. While Japanese fighters sacrificed armor and protection for agility, the P-38 was rugged, heavily armed, and could take punishment. In the nose, 4 50-caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon delivered devastating firepower in a tight stream that didn't need convergence like wing-mounted guns. It was a philosophy of war the Japanese had never encountered: technology and firepower over finesse. The shock for Japanese aviators was immense. Above 250 miles per hour, the Zero's controls grew stiff. Above 300, it was barely maneuverable at all. The P-38, on the other hand, could dive at over 500 miles per hour, then climb back to altitude before the Japanese could even react. Suddenly, the legendary turning radius of the Zero meant little. Instead of turning duels, American pilots fought with boom and zoom tactics. Strike from above, fire with devastating accuracy, and then escape back into the clouds. Perhaps the most devastating realization was psychological. For years, Japanese pilots had believed they were unmatched in skill and technology. Now they faced an opponent that was not only equal, but superior. Even Saburo Sakai himself admitted after the war that Zeros could no longer take on Lightnings in combat unless under rare, perfect conditions. For the men who had built their lives on the mythology of invincibility, it was a shattering truth. The P-38 soon proved it wasn't just another fighter. It was a strategic weapon. With its incredible range, it could escort bombers deep into Japanese-held territory and patrol areas far from American bases. In April 1943, Lightnings carried out one of the most famous missions of the war, Operation Vengeance, the interception of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. 16 P-38s flew over 400 miles across the Pacific, timed their interception to the minute, and shot down the mastermind of Pearl Harbor. For the Japanese, the death of Yamamoto at the hands of these twin-tailed demons was a blow that went far beyond the battlefield. The Lightning's dominance wasn't only about the aircraft, it was about the system behind it. American industry could produce thousands of them, continuously improving the design with every variant. Each problem discovered in combat was addressed in the next model. better roll rate, dive recovery flaps, cockpit heating, stronger engines. By contrast, the Japanese Zero that fought in 1945 was almost the same as the one that struck Pearl Harbor. Japan simply couldn't keep up with American innovation. As the war dragged on, the differences in pilot quality became just as decisive as the differences in technology. American P-38 pilots trained for hundreds of hours, studying gunnery footage, practicing high-altitude combat, and learning advanced tactics. Japanese replacements, rushed into combat with less than 100 hours of flight time, found themselves hopelessly outclassed. Letters from young Japanese pilots revealed their despair. One wrote to his mother in 1944, "Tomorrow, I will face the twin-tailed devils. I do not expect to return. They fly higher and faster than we can imagine. I will do my duty, but I know it is hopeless." By the end of the war, the statistics told the story with brutal clarity. Over 1,800 Japanese aircraft were destroyed by P-38s in the Pacific. America's top two aces, Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire, scored 78 victories between them, all in lightnings. Japan's top surviving ace ended the war with fewer victories accumulated over more years of combat. The Zero, once feared, had become prey. But perhaps the greatest humiliation for the Japanese wasn't in the kill counts. P-38 reconnaissance variants provided 90% of all aerial photography in the Pacific. The same aircraft that outclimbed and outfought the Zero also watched, photographed, and mapped every Japanese base. Even the shadows of the twin booms in the sky were enough to unsettle Japanese forces. Who knew their every move was being tracked? In the end, the P-38 Lightning represented more than just a superior aircraft. It symbolized the industrial age of warfare. Machines built not just for skillful duels, but for systematic dominance. Japanese aviators who had been raised in the code of the samurai found themselves fighting not men, but a system that combined engineering, production, and innovation in a way their warrior spirit couldn't overcome. After the war, Japanese officers admitted the truth plainly. Commander Masatake Okumiya said, "The P-38 broke our confidence completely. It wasn't just faster or better armed, it represented a way of war we couldn't match." Saburo Sakai put it even more simply. The P-38 destroyed the morale of the Zero fighter pilot. The Lightning was more than a fighter. It was a herald of the future. It proved that courage alone could no longer win battles. That in modern war, technology and industry would decide the outcome. For the Japanese pilots who once laughed at the strange twin-tailed plane, the shock of discovering they could not outrun, outclimb, or outfight it was devastating. They had entered the skies as warriors of the old world, and they left defeated by the machinery of the new.